The custodian wasn't supposed to be in that corridor. He was just trying to repair a dripping faucet near the west wing when he heard faint whimpers echoing through the quiet. When he rounded the corner and saw the young girl sitting alone, clutching her knees, his heart broke. What he did next would change both their lives forever. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The mop bucket creaked as Caleb Turner pushed it down the sleek granite hallway, the early evening sun casting amber rays across the glossy tiles. He adjusted his worn baseball cap and hummed softly, a habit he'd picked up during late shifts cleaning the city's tallest office complex. But today, he wasn't humming to break the silence. He was listening. There it was again, a stifled sob, quiet and small, like someone trying to stay unseen. He stopped near a service door, then turned the corner and froze. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, sat with her knees drawn up beside a maintenance closet. Her backpack lay, discarded, nearby. Her ponytail was messy, her face streaked with dried tears. Caleb glanced around. No adults, no guards, no front desk staff. Just this girl, crying in the heart of one of Chicago's priciest corporate towers. He knelt beside her. "Hey, kiddo. You okay?" She looked up with wide, frightened eyes but didn't speak. Instead, she hugged her legs tighter. Caleb reached into the paper sack under his arm and pulled out the ham sandwich he'd packed for lunch. He broke it in half. "Here," he said gently, offering it. "I don't know what's wrong, but trust me, ham helps more than just an empty stomach." She hesitated, then slowly took the half sandwich. As she nibbled quietly, Caleb sat beside her on the cool floor, ignoring his stiff back. "Name's Caleb," he said. "I'm just the custodian here. But you look like you could use a friend." The girl finally whispered, "I'm Lila." He smiled. "Nice to meet you, Lila." But what Caleb didn't know was that Lila's last name was Wentworth, and her father owned the building. Lila didn't say much after that. She kept eating the sandwich, occasionally glancing toward the frosted glass doors at the end of the hall, like she was waiting for someone, or maybe scared of someone. Caleb didn't press. He'd learned long ago that silence spoke its own language. But when he noticed the faint bruises on her wrist, small marks from someone who'd grabbed her too hard, his jaw tightened. Still, he kept his tone steady. "Want to sit here a bit longer?" he asked. Lila nodded, so he stayed. 20 minutes later, the elevator at the end of the corridor slid open. No chime, just a smooth mechanical hum. Out stepped a sharply dressed man in his 40s, all tailored navy suit and polished loafers. His presence filled the space like a storm. He was on the phone. "I don't care what the investors want. Tell the team to stand firm. I'll be there in 10. He barked, then turned and stopped. His eyes fixed on the custodian sitting on the floor next to his daughter, sharing what looked like a granola bar. The phone slipped from his ear. "Lila." The girl leapt up. "Dad." She ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Caleb stood, brushing dirt off his jeans. "She was crying down here. Thought I'd keep her company." James Wentworth narrowed his eyes. He was the CEO of Wentworth Enterprises, his family name etched in silver across the building's facade. He was accustomed to authority, silence, and being respected. But this custodian met his gaze like they were equals. "She wandered off during my conference call," James muttered, checking his daughter over. "I told her to stay with the front desk, but she hid." Caleb cut in, voice calm. "Someone scared her." James's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Caleb looked at Lila, whose fingers clung tightly to her dad's coat. "Maybe ask her," he said. That was when James noticed the sandwich in his daughter's hand, the crumbs on her sweater, the faint smile breaking through her fear. For a moment, the CEO forgot the client meeting, the deadline, the $60 million deal waiting in his email. He knelt in front of Lila. "Who hurt you?" Lila didn't answer, but she took Caleb's hand and squeezed it. And James saw it, the way this custodian, this stranger, had stepped in when no one else had. Not the guards, not the staff, not even himself. "Mr. Turner," Caleb said. "Caleb Turner." "I want to talk to you later, Mr. Turner," James said, standing. "Thank you for being kind." Caleb nodded. "Every kid deserves that." As they walked away, James glanced back, and for the first time in years, he felt a pang of guilt mixed with gratitude. The next morning, Caleb arrived early. He hadn't slept much. Something about Lila's quiet sadness had stuck with him. He wasn't one to get involved, especially not in the world of executives and boardrooms. But something about that girl made it impossible to stay detached. As he passed the security desk, he noticed something odd. People were watching him, not the usual dismissive glances custodians got when pushing their carts past glass offices. These looks were longer, almost respectful. "Morning, Caleb," the receptionist said with a smile, using his name for the first time in 3 years. Caleb blinked. A morning. By the time he reached the executive floor, things got stranger. A woman in a crisp blazer stood by the elevators. "Mr. Turner, Mr. Wentworth asked for you." Caleb hesitated. "I fix leaks and scrub tiles. Not sure why the top floor needs me." She smiled. He insisted, so up he went. The top floor of Wentworth Plaza was like another world, gleaming stone, smoked glass doors, a view of the Chicago skyline so sharp it seemed unreal. James Wentworth stood by the window, arms crossed, his charcoal suit impeccable. But his face was softer than the day before. "Lila's doing better," he said as Caleb stepped in. "Glad to hear it," Caleb replied cautiously. "She told me what happened. One of my assistants snapped at her in the hallway, thought she was some kid sneaking around. She got scared, ran off." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Figures." James stepped closer. "I didn't know she was in the building until an hour later." "That's on me." Caleb nodded. "We all miss things. The trick is fixing them." That made James pause. He gestured to a chair across from him. "Sit." Caleb hesitated, then sat still, wary. "I looked you up last night," James said plainly. "Marine veteran, one tour, mechanical background, laid off from your warehouse job after it closed. Been here 4 years. You missed custodian with knees that creak like old floorboards," Caleb said, smirking. James chuckled, then grew serious. "Why didn't you ever apply for something else here?" Caleb shrugged. "Didn't think anyone would see past the coveralls." James leaned forward. "Well, I did." A silence settled between them. Then he said something that shifted everything. "I'd like to offer you something more, something better." Caleb stared. "Why?" James didn't waver. "Because when my daughter was scared, you didn't see a job. You saw a person." Just then the door swung open. Lila rushed in, holding a crumpled drawing. She ran to Caleb and handed it to him, a messy sketch of a tall custodian holding a little girl's hand beside a towering silver skyscraper. James smiled. "She calls it the hero of the plaza." Caleb blinked hard. "I'm no hero. You are to her." And that's when it started to sink in. His life was changing in ways he hadn't expected. By the end of the week, rumors spread through the building like static. The custodian was now working directly under the CEO. People stared as Caleb passed. Some smirked, some looked puzzled, but most were curious. James Wentworth didn't just give promotions. He barely spoke to staff outside his floor. Now, Caleb had his own keycard. He didn't push a mop anymore. He carried a laptop and wore a press shirt. His new role, building operations manager, overseeing everything from HVAC systems to safety protocols. To his surprise, he was even consulted on tech upgrades. "Why me?" he'd asked James when the offer came. James replied without missing a beat. "Because while we were all stressed about a contract, you noticed a human being sitting on the floor." Still, the job wasn't the biggest change. It was Lila. Every day after school, she stopped by Caleb's office, often with a muffin or a sketch. She'd sit across from him, swinging her legs, talking about her day. "You're the only grown-up who listens like it matters," she told him one afternoon. That hit Caleb harder than he expected, because truthfully, he didn't have anyone in his life who listened like that either. One evening, while checking some faulty lights on the lower floors, he heard shouting. Two men in suits, one of them the assistant who'd yelled at Lila, were berating a courier, kicking packages like they were junk. "Hey," Caleb said calmly. The men turned. "Oh, look, it's the promotion guy," the assistant sneered. "Mr. Kid Saver. You don't talk to people like that," Caleb said, standing firm. That's when James's voice cut through. "Care to repeat that?" The laughter stopped. He stepped out from a doorway, arms folded. "Caleb has more integrity than you've shown since you started here. You're done. Clear your desk." The man's face paled. James turned to Caleb. "You have full authority to overhaul this team. You've earned it." Caleb blinked. "You sure?" James gave a sharp nod. Certain. That night, Caleb walked home with a strange feeling in his chest. Not pressure, not doubt, but belonging. 6 months later, Caleb stood outside Lila's school theater, tugging at the collar of his jacket. James had asked him to attend Lila's student showcase, saying it would mean everything to her. He hadn't worn a suit in years, but it felt right. Inside, the theater was filled with parents and kids. The lights dimmed. A gentle violin melody played. Lila walked onto the stage, holding a piece of paper. Her voice wavered at first, but then she saw Caleb in the crowd, steady and smiling, and her nerves faded. She began to read. This is for the person who taught me kindness isn't weak, that real strength is quiet, that heroes don't always wear suits. Sometimes they carry a mop. A few soft chuckles rippled through the crowd. James smiled, eyes glistening beside Caleb. He didn't know I was sad. He didn't know who I was. But he sat beside me, gave me half his sandwich, and made me feel safe when no one else did. That's what changed everything. Caleb's throat tightened. I hope when I grow up, Lila finished, I can be like him. The room went quiet, then burst into applause. Later that evening, back at Wentworth Plaza, James pulled Caleb aside. You know, this building's never had a director of community engagement. Caleb laughed. I'm not exactly a people person type. James stepped closer. You are because you understand what this place has lost. People, care, honesty. Caleb's hands were rough, scarred from years in warehouses and maintenance rooms. But when he shook James's hand to accept the role, there was no doubt. In the months that followed, he reshaped the building's heart. Custodians got dental benefits. New hires got mentors. Childcare was added for working parents. Employees weren't just cogs anymore. They were people with stories. And on the wall outside the main lobby, just past the hallway where Lila had once cried, there now hung a framed photo, a man in a custodian's uniform, sitting on the floor, offering half a sandwich to a little girl. Below it, a brass plaque read, "Kindness is the silent revolution. See Turner." Because in the end, Caleb didn't just fix pipes. He rebuilt souls.